More than 40 million people around the world have died from AIDS since the start of the epidemic, which is why today marks an important moment to keep the conversation going. On this World AIDS Day, let's welcome back Richard Reams, Director of Development for Palmetto Community Care. Great to have you back.
Oh, thanks so much. It's always a pleasure to be here.
You know, while we're remembering the lives lost, we also have to recognize South Carolina's ranking in the nation when it comes to new infections. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about where we stand.
Yes. So according to the most recent data, South Carolina is as high as number 9 in the country in terms of new diagnoses per capita.
So being in the top 10, what does that mean? What does that tell us?
Oh, well, that tells us we have a lot of work to do, a lot
Indeed,
of conversation
yeah.
around stigma reduction, testing, being aware of your status so you can be aware of treatment options, prevention options. I mean, that's a lot of what I do, right?
Sure.
So it's my whole job.
Well,
but
exactly. So where could we do better? And I'm talking about, you know, as a member of the media, but just as a community member in general, to get the word out to help people understand that they need to know what their status is. They need to know how to take care of their health to protect not just themselves, but others.
I think the first thing is just CDC recommends being tested at least once a year, no matter who you are, no matter what your life is, your practices, relationships. So just there's no shame or fear in being tested no matter who you are, because knowing your status is the first step in knowing what your options are.
Sure. And when you say that it's something that affects everybody, this is not a homosexual man's disease. Women and girls accounted for 46% of all new infections last year.
Yes.
That's half.
Yes.
That's half. And I understand that there's various ways in which one can contract it. What is the most common way?
The most common way is still men who have sex with men, or women who have sex with men who have sex with men, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And a lot of that comes with if somebody's unaware of their status, then they're likely not taking preventative measures, and that's how more and more people are contracting.
Right. Well, this year's theme is Let Communities Lead. Nothing about us without us. What does that mean?
Well, one, it means that we should be putting people and uplifting people into leadership positions who are living with HIV/AIDS, the communities that are most affected, not just asking them what their opinion is about something, but actually giving them a seat at the table that's equitable and fair.
Sure, yeah, I can understand that. Why is it a political issue? Because when we're talking about leadership and when we're talking about how does politics play into this as we look to a new administration in the next year?
A lot of it has to do with funding, and in the last budgets conversations, I have to be a little bit careful because of where our grant funding comes from, but there were a lot of movements in the House of Representatives to totally gut ending the epidemic funding and Ryan White funding that would really just be detrimental to our HIV/AIDS medical care system.
Right.
And so just being aware that the conversation's happening.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people realize those were attachments that were going into some of these bills, and that would do it. I mean, it would be terrible.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Now, we're in the top 10 here in South Carolina as far as new infections are concerned, but we have come a long way with new HIV infections have been down 59% since, I think, 1995. That was at its peak. So what would you credit with that significant drop, and how can we apply that here, maybe even tenfold, to really bring our number from 10 to 50?
Right. I would say is one, I'm going to sound like a beating a drum, is knowing your status. Because if you know your status, you know your options. So if you have received a negative status, then there's PrEP options, preventative measures that you can take that way. If you happen to receive a positive diagnosis, then understanding what viral suppression means. If your viral load is under a certain count, then it's technically undetectable. And if you're undetectable, then it's untransmittable. But you can't be aware of all of these things unless you're first aware of your status.
Well, you do have a holiday open house Thursday, December 7th from 4 to 6. That is at your new digs.
Yep.
So people need to come over there, and you're a great resource, and you've been so for the last 3 decades here in the Palmetto State here in Charleston. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing that with us.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. We're back after this.